Welcome to this week's compilation of the most captivating news stories. If you're looking for some interesting and thought-provoking content, you've come to the right place. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so you never miss out on our weekly compilations. Sit back, relax, and let us take you on a journey through the most fascinating news of the week. And if you have a favorite story, make sure to let us know in the comments section below. We love hearing from our viewers. And for those days when you just need something to have on in the background, be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. And if you have any recommendations for other viewers, leave them in the comments section along with the timestamps. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Doctors who have given a second opinion diagnosis? What's the worst first opinion you've encountered? Story 1. Well, when I first started feeling sick the October of 1 year at college, I had a non-productive cough, night sweats and trouble sleeping, and I had lost some weight. The school nurse gave me Claritin. All of those symptoms got worse. Plus, I was incredibly fatigued, my lymph nodes swelled up, and I had pretty bad backaches. My GP took a chest x-ray and prescribed antibiotics for pneumonia. At this point, I had almost failed out of school because I was only managing an hour or two of sleep per night. It took until spring break for me to go see a pulmonary specialist. He could instantly tell that it wasn't pneumonia. I had stage 4B Hodgkin's lymphoma. My first PET scan showed cancerous cells and lymph nodes in all 4 quadrants of my body. At this point, I had lost about a third of my body weight. The cough, weight loss, and back pain were my swollen lymph nodes pressing on my lungs, stomach, and my back. They gave me my first round of chemo, and I genuinely felt incredible. I felt like such dirt that an IV mixture of carefully measured toxins was an improvement. I went home and ate a whole pizza. Chemo got worse, but it worked. So I guess I can't complain too much. Glad you're okay. What a horribly frightening experience that must have been. Stay with us, friend. That's awful to have had such a bad misdiagnosis. The school nurse just giving you Claritin? I wonder if this person managed to get some leniency from the school and able to take some classes over or something. I wonder how well this person did academically up to this point. Story 2. Not me, but my mom. She was always exhausted. The type of exhaustion that she'd have a bath, be so tired from it, she'd sleep on the bath mat when she got out. Went to her doctor, told her, "Oh, you're just depressed. Go get a haircut." She did. Still exhausted. Went back to the doctor. Continued to tell her she's just depressed. Get a hobby. It's all in her head, etc. Never sent her for blood work. Never referred her to any specialist. Months later, she goes back. Her doctor is on vacation. Physician relieving her doctor takes one look at her eyes and says, "It's your liver. Get these blood tests now." Abnormal blood work and a liver biopsy later, she was told she had autoimmune hepatitis and was 3 months from perishing. After she improved with medications, she went back to the original doctor and said, "I don't need a haircut." 27 years later, she still suffers from lingering effects. All you did to the original doctor was say you didn't need a haircut? Oh, you need to tell that story from the mountains. That doctor needs to learn a little more sympathy for their patients. I'm glad they were able to catch it. It's too bad you're still suffering effects. Story 3. I'm a surgeon. Most patients come to me after having seen another physician who has diagnosed them with something and told the patient to see a surgeon. I've been called to see more than one patient for appendicitis who has already had an appendectomy. I've also been called in multiple cases for patients who very obviously have previously undiscovered very advanced cancer. It's always too far advanced for me to be of help. So I have to wonder, am I being called so I can be the bad guy and explain everything? Yes. The answer is yes. That's awful that he has to be the scapegoat. I'm pretty sure you become a doctor because you want to help people. That's awful that you're being sent people who are beyond your help. Is it these particular doctors that are sending people over, or is he just getting them from all over? Story 4. I have one that happened to me. I did college gymnastics. My senior year, I had an accident in practice landing on my neck. Went to the hospital, got x-rays, was told I was perfectly fine. Walked around in pain for a while. Weeks later, went to another doc, got a new set of images. My neck was broken in 3 places and had a dislocation. Had a multi-level fusion surgery days later. Found out my x-rays got swapped with someone else's in the ER, and I was originally diagnosed based on someone else's images. This was found out when I went to get my records long after my surgery for insurance purposes, and my files had someone else's medical records and images in it. Because of the time I spent walking around with it, I had to have a posterior surgery instead of anterior, which is way more invasive and gives me major issues to this day. Story 5. I'm a lawyer, but had a client given a devastating diagnosis of an extremely rare heart condition. Doctors told him he had 6 weeks to live. He contacted me to make his will and set his affairs in order. Thankfully, he sought a second opinion with an extremely well-known cardiologist. I guess the cardiologist was intrigued due to the rare nature of this heart condition. There was nothing wrong with him. He was fine. This poor guy and his family were tortured over this, so devastated and terrified for nothing. He actually called me to tell me all of this. He seemed to be still in the joyous "I'm not going to perish" stage. But I imagine anger comes at some point when you take stock of what you went through. I don't know how a doctor fricks that up massively, or if somehow my client's results were mixed up with someone else's, and some poor mongrel's number is almost up and they don't even know it. Story 6. Not a doctor. My sister was about 2 weeks away from giving birth when she suddenly started feeling excruciating pain and vomiting. I called her midwife, who refused to speak with me, despite my sister clearly not capable of speaking as she sat on the floor next to the toilet, crying and puking. Finally, she just took the phone and was told by her midwife that it was probably just a virus and to eat a popsicle. Eventually, I was able to convince her to go to the ER. She was immediately rushed in the OR for an emergency C-section. Her placenta had abrupted, and my niece was born not breathing, suffered several seizures, and even perished and then was resuscitated. She is now 15 and has cerebral palsy due to going so long without the oxygen she needed. I cannot believe that one. And that one was so preventable if they had gone to the ER early. How long was this midwife a midwife? I hope her reputation and career tanked. Story 7. Patient. When I was in college, I went to the doctor because I was peeing razors. It progressed pretty rapidly, and by the end of the week, I couldn't walk or sleep. The doc asked me about my private life, and I told him the truth, that my girlfriend and I had only been with each other and together for many years. He sort of scoffed at that and told me it was likely chlamydia. Had a long condescending speech about safe spicy time with me, and sent me home. A week later, my pee tests were back. Turns out I had the worst bladder infection they'd ever seen. I had to have a camera shoved up my pee hole, multiple rounds of antibiotics, and to this day I struggle to pee due to irreversible damage the infection caused. Oh man, that sucks. UTIs are rare in men, but super common for women, and I get like one every other year. I've gotten really good at feeling the beginning of one before it gets worse, and I drop everything and rush to urgent care. They hurt. Story 8. This is the opposite answer, but the best request for a second opinion came from a CVS Minute Clinic. Young, healthy law student goes to Minute Clinic. Has the flu. This was a few years ago. No Rona. Feels awful. They check him out. Yep, he has a fever, aches, sore throat. It's the flu. Flu swab positive. His clinic vitals were notable for a heart rate of 140, a bit high but not crazy high. Reassuring numbers less than 100. The guy otherwise walked into the CVS and is a young, healthy guy. Would have been pretty easy to dismiss. Anyway, the Minute Clinic says go to the ER. You need an EKG. So the guy follows orders. ER chief complaint is, I have the flu and CVS told me to come here. ER gets an EKG, and he's in slow VT, which is a life-threatening arrhythmia that you have to be shocked out of. They take a look at his heart, and it was giant and barely moving. He had an insane myocarditis. Dude ended up getting cannulated for ECMO within hours. Cardiac bypass machines as life support. I can't say all Minute Clinics are the same, but holy hell, that was a great save. Story 9. I'm a gynecologist. The number of times I've seen patients pregnant and upset or happy because some other doctor told them they can't get pregnant, so they didn't use birth control is appalling. Usually it's family med. Not ragging on all FM docs, just how it goes. I then have to explain that even if the patient has whatever condition that makes it unlikely for them to get pregnant, the odds are almost never zero. Maybe less than 1%, but still not zero, so of course it can happen. I have read stories about all the side effects that all the various birth controls cause. I can understand if someone feels like they have an excuse to not use it at all. The stuff women have to go through to not be pregnant is just astounding. I'm glad at least some people are happy that they got pregnant. Story 10. Not a doctor, but my mom went into a walk-in clinic and told the doc she had really bad headaches all the time. She was a stay-at-home mom to me, 10, and my sister, 6, so it was written off as stress and got a prescription for pain pills. 2 weeks later, the headaches were migraines. Stronger prescription and try to reduce stress. A few weeks go by and she can no longer get out of bed. Throws everything up, including the meds, is completely disoriented and barely alive. My dad was a truck driver, so he was never home. I was taking care of me, my sister, and my mom all by myself. We go back to the doctor, and this lady had the audacity to say this is the weirdest migraine case she's ever seen. Tells her to take warm baths and just keep taking the meds when she throws them up. 2 months go by, and my dad came home. Saw the condition of my mother, who was so sick she would urinate herself, the house, which was being kept up by a 10-year-old, and said he wanted a divorce. That night, we found out she had stage 4 lung and brain cancer with a tumor the size of an egg pressing on her brain, as well as many others scattered throughout. I still haven't forgiven that doctor for not taking my mom seriously. Story 11. I just left a practice partly because a woman brought her 8-month-old in for a second opinion. The practice owner had seen the rapidly enlarging sacral soft tissue mass which the mother first noticed about 6 weeks prior. He told her not to worry about it. I checked the notes, which read, "Plan. Ignore." I was shocked. There was a new onset rapidly enlarging blue/purple cystic mass on a baby's sacrum. It looked like a small plum under the skin at the top of her bum crack, and without any intervention, my colleague dismissed it. I was appalled. The mother was relieved. This wasn't the first not great judgment I'd seen, but it was one of the worst. I realized I couldn't work in a clinic where I'd be stepping on other doctors' toes and couldn't trust their judgment. The babies had an imaging and a referral to a pediatric surgeon, but unfortunately, I don't know the outcome because I'm working elsewhere now. Honestly, at that point, I'd pull the mother aside in the lobby and say something like, "If it doesn't improve on its own in a few days, I'd find a bigger place to give you a third opinion." Story 12. Told by my doctor my health issues were stress-related. The second opinion found that my gallbladder was functioning at 3% and had that sucker removed a couple weeks later. What's worse is I specifically asked the first doctor about gallbladder and they assured me it couldn't be that. Gallbladders are notorious for causing a ton of seemingly unrelated health issues. After mine was removed, my life improved dramatically. And now I have to go look up and see what gallbladders do. They function as something, but it's kind of weird that we can live without it. I mean, it's not like the appendix. The appendix just seems like that thing that just sits there until it decides it wants to cause problems. But the gallbladder actually seems to serve a function. Do you have to go on medications after you get a gallbladder removed? Story 13. Not a doctor. My husband had a situation where he almost perished because of a misdiagnosis. To preface this, at the time, we were young in our mid-20s living in a college town. My husband had horrible pain. On the floor on his hands and knees horrible. We went to the ER, and the doctor barely looked at him and just told him to stop drinking and he would be fine. We go home, the pain is getting worse, and now he's vomiting. As soon as the doctor's office opens back home where we grew up, we drove 1.5 hours to see our primary care. Within 15 minutes of walking into the GP office, my husband was rushed into emergency surgery. His gallbladder had completely ruptured and he was going septic. It was a total mess, and he almost perished because of a misdiagnosis. Story 14. Not a doctor. Dealt with an unrelated incident and reading a patient's notes found he had been diagnosed with a rare but deadly skin cancer and was booked in to have his upper lip removed. Obviously, this would leave the patient quite disfigured. On a whim, he'd booked in to see a dermatologist at our hospital, who advised it was a cold sore, prescribed aciclovir, and the problem was resolved. This one astounds me, not only because I'm pretty sure doctors are told not to expect a zebra when they hear hoofbeats, but also because you'd think they would have run a simple test before major surgery. What's the worst or best D-denier you've ever given, gotten, or witnessed? Story 1. Last semester, a friend who we'll call David and I were at a huge party out of town, and the party just got shut down by the cops. No big deal, we just go to the next party down the street. Skip ahead to the end of the night, and we're both pretty drunk at this point. Now, David is with Abby, who is completely down to take him home with her, and being the nice guy that I am, I try and keep her completely sober roommate Jessica from ruining the night by talking to her. While the four of us walk back to their dorm, I try to make a conversation with the roommate, but all she's giving me are one-word answers and staring at her phone. We get to the edge of campus, and David and Abby pause to make out for a bit, and cue Jessica to begin the peen pausing. She proceeds to interrupt them by telling Abby she wants to go home and asks us where we plan on staying for the night. We tell her that we're not entirely sure, and that Abby invited David back with her. Jessica doesn't seem to like this, however, and tells us that Abby's other roommate Trisha had apparently threw up on the floor, and that Abby would be sleeping in Jessica's bed with her while Trisha stayed in the throw-up room alone. Better still, Jessica then points at the park bench nearby and tells us that we can sleep on those. Plenty of people do it all the time. Ignoring this gem of advice, David pulls Abby aside to talk/make out some more as Jessica again pulls out her phone. Up to this point, Jessica is doing pretty well trying to phallus fumble David and Abby, but she wasn't done. For her final move, interrupting David and Abby, Jessica then shows us her phone, which she had looked up nearby hotels for us to stay at before essentially dragging Abby away, wishing us a good night. Best passion preventer I've ever witnessed. Too long didn't read? Sober roommate 1, everyone else 0. Gotta admit, this person was on point. You don't know if she's looking out for this girl, or if she's just being a jerk. I kinda think she's looking out for her. We don't know anything about Abby's state at this point. Was she really drunk? It kinda sounds like Abby was kind of out of control and Jessica was kind of being the level head. Story 2. College during my sophomore year. I drank far more and far heavier than I had any reason to. This obviously led to a fair amount of nights that I could not remember what I did. Well, one night during a party, I start talking to this chick. She seems really friendly and talkative with me, so I think things are going great. At one point in the night, she accidentally drops her phone in the toilet, so I quickly offer to dismantle it and let it air dry properly. None of this rice bowl doggy doo-doo here. She's super thankful. I'm on cloud 9, thinking for once I'm doing all the right moves and have a proper chance at things. That's when she exclaims, "Oh, thank you so much, Maltalica. You're always so nice." And that's when it hits me that I don't know this girl's name, and yet somehow she knows mine and seems to be on a familiar basis with me. Biting the bullet, I just decide to ask how she knows me again and whether we had met before, and she just kind of laughs and explains. Apparently, over the past few weeks, she had been coming out to parties at my place, and we had met several times while I was thoroughly blacked out, and my blacked out self decides to be her best friend ever, even encouraging her to talk with some of my other friends. I had ruined my chances before I even knew I had them. Too long didn't read? Blacked out past self sent a flesh wand fumble to the future. There's the classic statement from the Pogo comic strip. We have met the enemy, and he is us. This is very painful to read. Apparently this guy just friend-zoned himself. But at least when he's blacked out drunk like this, he was giving his friends a chance. Too many people when they're drunk turn out to be jerks. This guy appears to be extremely altruistic for some reason. Story 3. A couple of years ago, my buddy and I were out at a bar having a great time. As closing time grew near, an older woman hell-bent on taking a man home approached me thinking I could be the one. In my inebriated state, I spoke with her for a bit. She perceived this as me being interested in her, and suddenly she asked if I'd like to go home with her. In a state of shock, I told her I was with him, to which she replied, "Oh, I'm sure he can find a ride home." He had been listening the whole time and instantly jumped in with the most flamboyant voice I've ever heard. "Oh no, honey, he's with me." I just went with it. "Yes, I'm sorry I didn't clarify, but he's my lover." She had a look of shock on her face that I hadn't seen in ages and apologized profusely. Then he took it a step further. "This is my man, and you know what? He makes me pancakes every Saturday. Do you know what I like with my pancakes? Penis." She bolted out of there like lightning had struck her, and I don't think we've laughed harder since that experience. I love that guy. I think this one goes under defense rather than blocking. We all want to hear great stories about a wingman helping his friend get into some action. You don't always hear many stories about the wingman helping them get out of a potentially bad situation. Here we are with one of them. It's great that they both had the foresight to play along. Story 4. So I was at this party and there was this really creepy guy that was hitting on every girl there. Dude was all greasy and nasty and just a generally creepy guy. So he's across the room and is motioning for my best friend's girlfriend to come over and talk to him. As my friend gets up to go punch him in the face, I stand up and run over to him. I feel kind of bad for him, but at the same time I was drunk enough to try and mess with him. My friend sat down once he saw that I had it handled. So when I got to the guy, I said, "Hey bro, what's up? You waved me over here." He started freaking out. "Oh my God, no, I swear, I was trying to get that hot blonde to come over." So I responded, "Hey man, if you get a little gay when you drink, that's really okay. Nobody's here to judge you." At this point, he starts to really convince me that he's trying to talk to a girl and not me. I still feel as if I hadn't messed with him enough, so I say, "Look, bro, Beans, if you're just trying to get your toy tool sucked on, let me know. I gotcha." I then walked back to my friends who couldn't believe what they had just heard, and they all laughed. The creep was then removed from the party by one of the fraternity guys who were putting the party on. Too long didn't read. Creep tried to hit on my friend. I hit on him instead. I'm a straight male. Story 5. Sophomore year, I lived in a separated double, 2 rooms with a connected door with my best friend. One fateful Saturday, he managed to bring this very beautiful freshman back to his room. I, on the other hand, had just gotten over a breakup and was on a bender of epic proportions. According to Will, my roommate, I got back to my room around 1 a.m., drunk off my butt, and started banging around in my room. He didn't want to freak out the girl he was with, so he told her not to worry about the noise, and they kept hooking up. A few minutes later, though, the door that separated us came crashing down, as I had apparently managed to destroy the bolt keeping it in place. What was even more remarkable, though, was that I had taken all of the drawers out of my dresser and set them up just behind the threshold of the door. I then yelled, "Our doors are now drawers! Welcome to the future of efficiency!" and passed out on the floor. Needless to say, Will's guest decided to book it, making me a hookup harasser. Edit. Thanks for the gold, stranger. I will let Will know that someone rewarded me for ruining his night. Story 6. I talked with these 2 awesome friend girls I've known for a while about a threesome. They had expressed interest in having another one, and were discussing candidates for the male position. I was next to them at the bar and jokingly raised the Hunger Games salute and said, "I volunteer as tribute." This got a good laugh, and unexpectedly, they seemed kind of into it. I go to work after that, and then when I'm off, meet up with them and cruise around some bars in a big group. They are super spicy and flirty all night, lap-sitting, talking about spicy time, the whole deal. Well, one of their co-workers is in the Army and about to leave on his 2nd deployment. He's an all-right guy, but is acting pretty superior and cocky all night. I can chalk that up to nerves on his part. I know I'd be a bundle of emotion if I was in his shoes. But this son of a shrew is monopolizing all the attention. Shots happen, everybody is feeling loose and flirty, and when the house lights come up and the bar is closing, we pile into a cab. At the very last moment, Army guy jumps in our taxi. My plan had been to suggest we get a hotel room and some room service, champagne, and spark a joint. Army guy wants to go home, and he lives a bit away. During the cab ride, the conversation gets heavy and serious. Before long, the girls are emotional and crying. This kills the mood. We all get dropped off one by one, he and I being the last. Godzilla. I was expecting the Army guy to get the threesome this guy was angling for. Did he even know about that part of the conversation? He had a pretty good angle on it if he did. He's going to be going away for a while, doesn't know when he's going to come back. It doesn't sound like he had any clue what was going on. He was probably just working through some nerves about being deployed. Story 7. I was 58 years old at the time. Went out with a 25-year-old girl, my neighbor from India, who was here getting her master's. I took her out to celebrate her completion prior to her leaving in a couple of weeks back to India. She tells me on the way home she wanted to have spicy time with a white guy before she went back. No one would know, and she felt I was safe and wouldn't become attached. Pulls a negligee partway out of a purse to show me she was serious. I get back to my place, and my 22-year-old son has dropped by with a friend to visit. Both are partially drunk, but not too drunk to pick up on what is happening. My son thinks it will be funny to hang around. Finally, she gets frustrated and leaves. My son thinks it's hilarious. Me? Not so much. I will get my payback, though, even though I won't be around to see it. His older brother has agreed that on his younger brother's 58th birthday, he'll take him out for drinks and hire a young paid play partner to hit on him, giving him the build-up that he's going to get lucky. Then he gets presented with a card from the young lady that is going to say, "Your dad wanted you to have this card." Hey, son, curse you. Only 38 years to go from now. His older brother can hardly wait. Story 8. I do not go to clubs, but my wife has dragged me along a few times on what really is a girls' night out, plus a neutered purse holder / driver. It's terrible, but I get handsomely rewarded the next day. Anyway, some of these clubs are really violation-friendly. I think that's another reason I'm dragged around. So when I'm out, there's always that girl in the corner getting harassed by that guy that isn't hearing the word no. Girl is always a bit too drunk to keep her resolve, and after enough drinks, just looks helpless, stuck in alone. It's super easy to hanky-panky harass. You just walk up to the girl, say, "Hey, have you seen Karen? I can't find her. Can you check the bathroom for me?" They get momentarily confused, but then they clear up and duck into the bathroom where I ask my wife to go and see if she's okay. Wife always explains what that was all about. I always get profusely and drunkenly thanked by the girl as my wife helps them find their friends and get death stares all night from the guys. This has happened like 4 or 5 times now. I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm just super bored and super sober. Scavengers are creepy, and it's funny. Story 9. Once when I worked at a bar, I got a guy to roofie himself. I worked at a bar, and one night we were super busy. I noticed that on one side of the bar there was a guy trying to chat up a bird and she was clearly not interested. Nothing weird here. Lots of people suck at chatting up women. I would see this often. Anyway, guy calls me over and orders 2 beers, one for him and one for the lady. Anyway, as I turn, I noticed out of the corner of my eye him fumbling with something. I assumed he was taking something. Again, not uncommon to see. I watched him though, and he dropped some kind of pill into the girl's drink. As he turned to tell her the drinks were up, I moved over and switched the glasses around. Later in the night, the bouncer told me about a guy he had to roll out the back door because he had passed out in the toilets, causing a line. After a few questions, it turned out to be the guy who unknowingly drugged himself. Oh, the sweet revenge! Good on this guy for turning the tables. Roofies are just beyond creepy. If you wouldn't want it happening to you, why in the world are you okay with making it happen to someone else? What is your favorite, and that's why we had to put this sign up story? Story 1. Not a sign, but I was going through a military school in Alabama when a classmate asked for a ride to a local bar so she could line dance. It was her preferred exercise and she was jonesing, so I took her, being the only person available with a POV, privately owned vehicle. She danced for a couple of hours. Teach a new line dance night on a Wednesday, as I recall. Then I said it was time to go back to our lodging. Because I was tired. I added that I would be leaving town that weekend, but I'd noticed a mechanical bull in the corner. It was just sitting there that night, but I bet they had it going on the weekend, and all she had to do was tell the fighter pilots in the room about the mechanical bull, and she would have a ride to the bar to line dance to her heart's content that weekend. She agreed it was a good idea. I came back Monday morning and was met by a couple of greetings that went something like, "Did you hear about James?" I said, "No," and they said they had to hurry, but we could talk later. I caught the third person who said that and asked what specifically had happened. She began with, "Well, see, Amy suggested this great bar across town where there was a mechanical bull. Turns out, James had ridden well and long, being fairly athletic and not having had much to drink, and they had cranked up the volume, if you follow. He'd been doing great until his right foot had become wedged between the pedestal and the saddle at precisely the moment he had pitched his body left to counterbalance the buck of the saddle, and snap, snap. Anyways, in a roundabout way, thanks to me, the Air Force now includes mechanical bull on their list of risky or dangerous activities. The military has a list of dangerous activities? Are you prohibited from participating in these activities? It seems like the list should start with being military. Not prohibited so much as you need approval from your commander and a nice piece of paper that says you have it. Yeah, that makes sense. I suspect if that wasn't in place, people would do all sorts of stuff to try and get out of the Army. They could always say, "Hey, I was just trying to have a good time." I haven't even seen this leg snap and I'm already cringing at the thought. Story 2. Through my cousin, who managed a restaurant for years. On the hostess stand at the front, they had a sign that said, "We smoke our meats with premium applewood." A small bowl of the wood chips they used was placed right in front of it. The amount of people who would take a wood chip and try to eat it were staggering. It got to the point they had to keep a bag of the wood chips in the cabinet of the hostess stand. People would sometimes put them in their mouth and spit it out embarrassed and try to cover it up. Some would laugh and say, "I shouldn't have had that last drink." Others would turn around, double down, and try to give the saliva-covered chip to the hostess, then complain that, "These mints are disgusting." So now there is another sign beside the bowl that says, "Wood chips. Do not eat," in red letters. Makes for fun conversation every night for the hostesses seating people who are new to the restaurant. Unfortunately, they still need to keep an extra bag of wood chips in the stand, and people still think they look like a great after-dinner snack. Now, when the double downers complain, the hostess just points to the sign and laughs. People never cease to amaze. "What do you mean? It's a chip, ain't it? If I can eat potato chips and corn chips and apple chips, why can't I eat applewood chips? I'm suing." Paint chips are the best chips. Surely there has to be a better way to demonstrate the smell of applewood. Are these chips meant to be souvenirs? Sounds like the restaurant is doubling down on still bringing out these applewood chips. If so many people are eating them, why not just have a piece of wood that smells like applewood? Then you could just have a sign that says, "Hey, give this a smell." Unless you're afraid someone's going to try and stick it in their mouth, light it up, and smoke it. Story 3. From my father. He was eating at a seafood restaurant and had to pee. There was a sign on the door to the bathroom that said something like, "If you ate this dish, then wash your hands before using the bathroom." My father, being male, and my father laughed it off and stepped inside to use the urinal. There was a moment when he was peeing and fine, and then there came the moment when he felt like his peen was on fire. So he ran to the sinks and started splashing water on his junk, which also splashed his face, so he, in a very Home Alone style, grabbed his face in an OMG fashion, which then started to burn his eyes. so he was there for a very long time, splashing water up and down trying to control the burn. Eventually, he returned to the table, paid, and left. Obviously, there was a reason why the sign existed, and he was just an extension of it. Hatch, New Mexico is famous for its chili peppers. People make pilgrimages from all over the country to buy them. If you've never had Hatch chili pepper, seriously, go get some now. They're friggin' awesome. If you go there on your own personal pepper pilgrimage, you'll notice that a few of the pepper vendors have signs in their bathrooms that read, "Wash hands before using the facilities." A lot of tourists, including me, learned that lesson the hard way. I'd spent most of the morning handling peppers, sampling pepper jellies, pepper gummies, tasting pepper-infused wine, etc. I went to the bathroom, whipped out Mr. Happy, and proceeded to do my business. Let's just say that Hatch chili peppers have a little heat on them. I think the only reason I know not to touch your face when I've just touched chili peppers is from the YouTube show Hot Ones. If you've never seen it, it's great. Celebrities eat chicken wings with increasingly hotter hot sauce on them while answering questions. There was an older show I loved on YouTube too called Hot Pepper Gaming. People would review video games, but first they would eat a chili pepper, usually one of the very hotter ones. They had to get through the whole review before they were allowed to drink water or milk. Story 4. I work in an office in the bathroom. We have a sign that says, "Please don't flush printer paper. Throw your divorce papers in the trash." Now, every time someone in our office has to use the bathroom, we say, "I gotta go flush the divorce papers." When I was in the 4th grade during art class, I drew a Minecraft creeper drawing on construction paper. Later, me and my friends went to use the bathroom, and I still had the drawing in my hands. So I decided to lay the drawing into the urinal just to be funny. Then, one of my friends flushed the urinal. The paper didn't let the water go through the hole of the urinal, so we decided to start flushing it over and over, and the water began to overflow the bowl and onto the floor. Then, one of the teachers got suspicious to why she heard laughing and yelling in the bathroom. She came in and saw what we were doing, and went out and told every adult she could see, and more teachers came in and took us into the principal's office. We all blamed it on each other, and most of us got suspended, including me. 4th grade. Minecraft creeper. I'm sorry, I just can't get past this. Story 5. My husband and I moved into our first home. It was a completely renovated, amazingly cool house. We knew the previous owner flipped it, and it was a bona fide bachelor pad. Leather bar, pinball machine, blue underlighting in the kitchens and bathroom, hot tub, the whole 9 yards. A few weeks after moving in, we noticed people kept stopping by the house asking for Alex. We told them he didn't live here anymore, and they would always ask if we had his new address. They were nice enough, but it was starting to get annoying. On Tuesday evening around 11, we were falling asleep on the couch, and all of a sudden some guy strung out appeared in our living room. He opened the sliding door right next to us and walked in asking for Alex. My husband stood up and was like, "What the hell? Alex doesn't live here anymore. Tell all your friends." And the guy left. We learned the next day from our neighbor that Alex was the local pharmaceutical kingpin in the area and frequently had his unsavory clientele over to pick up product here at all hours of the day or night. That weekend, we put up a sign that said, "Alex doesn't live here." Went out and got a massive Rottweiler. We named him Alex. Well, where the hell did your dog live? Alex didn't live in that house. He got his own doghouse all to his own. Story 6. My stepdad worked at a shipping yard, and they had to put cylindrical tanks in one of 2 spots, indicating whether they were full of gas or empty. So one day, the boss asks a guy to wield 2 signs, one that says full and the other saying empty. This guy wasn't all there, and he did create the signs and showed them off to his boss. The first one was well made. Full, it said. The second one, MT. They all found it so funny they kept it that way. There is a bad habit among the shop workers of my area at least. When an oxygen or acetylene bottle is empty, they take a paint marker and write MT on the tank. It's really obnoxious because those tanks get reused all the time, so when they come back full, it's still read MT. We had one guy get written up because he took a wire wheel brush on a grinder to erase it. It was acetylene, and it was very much full. Don't take power tools to explosive tanks, kids. It's an absolute dumb move. Idea: use chalk. It stays on while you need it, but comes off easily. At some point, I thought the story was going to go bad because someone mistook MT for something else. I'm glad it was just the issue about the tanks getting marked wrong. But I also think you just need to be cautious around any tank, whatever it's labeled. Even if your shop is completely fastidious about how these things are named, you shouldn't do anything to them that would cause them to explode in any way, just to be safe. Story 7. Back when I was a kid, there was a roadside park we picnicked at where a guy chasing a frisbee jumped a fence, not realizing that those were not bushes on the other side, but the tops of trees growing from the base of a 30-foot cliff. So anyway, that's how that park came to have signs every 10 feet on the fence warning of the drop. A couple of guys, I know one of them, did this in our city at a ramp for underground parking for the law courts. They were drunk and decided that they could jump the hedge in front of them. Broken ankles for everyone! Sadly, they sued and won over lack of signage. I still think dumb is its own reward. Edit: I didn't mention the height of the hedge. It wasn't like a 3-foot little decoration. This was chest level in front of the cement guardrail. All in all, an impressive leap. Story 8. His first day of kindergarten, my brother thought he could escape during recess by trying to climb this massive chain-link fence. He got up about 8 feet before the lunch ladies noticed and disciplined him. The aide sent him to the principal's office where he questioned why he did it. My little smart-mouthed 5-year-old brother replied that there was no sign that said you can't climb it. There is now a sign. At a seminar on new colostomy supplies, there was a sticker on the colostomy bag collar, the part your modified intestine sticks through, stating that the colostomy was not to be used for spicy pleasure. I don't know the backstory, but according to a doctor I know, it's disturbingly common for people to catch STDs in their colostomy hole because, well, I had to learn that so y'all do too. How do I unlearn something? Story 9. We had to place a no hanging around outside sign up because the teenagers did not know what no loitering meant. I work in private security. I once upon a time had to ask a group of people hanging out in a hospital parking garage to leave. They asked why. I said we had a policy of no loitering in the garage due to some issues we had been having with break-ins. Their response was, "We ain't loitering, we're just waiting around." I had a friend in high school who thought loitering was just another word for littering, which sort of makes sense if you know the area. There's a very specific accent to the area that I can't really explain. The words high tide is a good example, though. It's pronounced hoy-toid, like the center sound is a British pay attention oi instead of a hard I. So litter to loiter isn't as big a stretch as you would think. He'd lived there all his life, and I was from off, so I got to explain the difference. Weird day. It's interesting how signs have to evolve. Is there some point where police officers or a judge has to say, understanding this sign is your own responsibility? Or do we have to keep changing the signs because people keep challenging it mentally? It's like watching human intelligence in correlation to the signs and how they've evolved. Story 10. They had to put up a large sign at a local nursing home saying basically, don't let people out the door to outside without checking with staff. Evidently, a resident in a gown and wheelchair asked a visitor to hold the door with an alarm and a keypad/code to open for them, and the person did. The staff ran out and got the patient at the end of the driveway about to push into traffic. The visitor actually said, "I didn't know she wasn't allowed out." This is a second or third-hand story, so I don't know the validity. I have heard of some retirement homes that will have a bus stop built on the sidewalk between the main building and the road, and it has a big sign saying bus stop on it. So if a person slips out, they often would get to the bus stop and then sit down to wait for the bus. Staff would keep an eye on the bus stop and round up anybody that was out there waiting for the bus. The real bus stop was on the street, and you had to walk a little bit further to get to it. I feel bad for the lost elderly tourist who was rounded up at the bus stop and dragged into the nursing home. What's a very common thing that you just can't relate to? Story 1. Fighting, yelling, hostility in relationships with my significant other. It could very well stem from my childhood, I guess. It's not to say we don't have disagreements or the relationship is flawless, but obstacles always have been resolved without much issue. Fortunately, this held true with all of my romantic relationships. I've always lived by the saying, conflict is inevitable. Fighting is optional. My God, yes. People all around me think that's normal or even desirable, and I'm horrified when I see them screaming at each other and saying stuff designed to hurt the other person. Yeah, I don't get it either. How can you feel the need to hurt the other person you supposedly care for just to get a point across? Words can be devastating, and they can't be retracted. Someone told me my husband and I had to have a screaming fight before we got married, or we'd get divorced after our first screaming fight because we wouldn't know how to handle it. We've been married for 6 years and have 2 kids and 1 on the way. We have never had a screaming fight. Do we disagree? Yes. Have we gotten frustrated with each other? Yes. But we do not scream. That's not going to accomplish anything. Taking some time to organize our thoughts and eat some humble pie and then talking about it is what helps. I can't imagine screaming at my husband, and he's been with me through 2 labors. That hostility makes me so uncomfortable. Why do people treat those they love so horrible? This one. Everyone's like, all couples fight. No. No, they don't. Not what most people picture as a fight, anyway. And there is a difference between those who still sort their issues, just constructively, and not what would register as a fight to anyone, and those who just don't sort anything. I was in the latter situation when I was married. That wasn't good. I'd basically realized nothing was ever going to improve, so I stopped bringing up the things I needed. I'm in the former situation now. It's great. My partner and I sort things, bring things up with each other, etc. We just don't get all offended that the other person has needs or raise our voices to each other or anything like that. I dated one guy in the past who thought big screaming insult-laden fights were normal, and I've never found anything as startling in my life as the first time he lit into me like that. I think I just sat there and waited for him to stop yelling and then said, "Who even talks to another person that way?" which only made him madder. Of course, that situation did not last. Yeah, that was a given. I don't get things like that either. These are all people who do have disagreements, maybe arguments, but not straight-out fights. I think fights could come from a lot of different emotional places, but I think it's a lot of fear. Fear of possibly losing someone for disagreeing with them. Fear of things not being the same just because they have this disagreement. Story 2. Taking and sharing pictures of everything. Except for when I'm traveling, I take maybe 20 pics a year. My boyfriend is like this. He very rarely takes pictures. I used to be too, but I lost someone last year and I realized I didn't have one picture with them, and it broke my heart. So I promised myself that I'd take more pictures. I don't understand people that take pictures of everything, but I do try to capture moments. Not to post on social media, but just so I have them if I ever lost that person. This is going to sound crazy, but I've started taking tons of extra pictures of my kitty cat for this reason. She's almost 14 years old, and though she's still healthy, I know her years are numbered, and I want as many memories of her as possible. I used to be like this. Then you realize how much you forget as life goes on. Sometimes someone leaves you or passes away, and you realize you don't have much to remember them by. You say you'll have those memories of good times in your head, but most won't last. 10 years later, you'll struggle to remember. Life is precious. Life is fun. It's nice to occasionally stroll memory lane and remember the good times, but you can't if you don't take pictures. I lost my mother at the end of November. Not long after, I went searching on my phone for photos and videos of her, only to find that I barely have any. I miss her face and voice a lot. There seems to be a lot of counter-argument on this particular point. I know a situation of a different nature. Someone I knew had a brother who passed away. They were both musicians. They were both very young, in their teens. One day the brother was finishing up clearing out some of his gear and came across a keyboard. It had a built-in sequencer, and when he triggered it, a piece started playing on it. He realized that this was his brother playing on that keyboard. It touched him to hear something from the past that he'd never thought he'd hear again. He got to hear his brother play music again. Story 3. Loving and wanting to spend time with your family. Had a terrible, awful childhood. As an adult, just lots of toxic interactions whenever anyone from my family got involved in my life, so all cut off. When I see people posting about their family and how much they love them, I just don't understand it. I don't understand my fiancé missing his mom, etc. I know I'm the anomaly, but just can't relate in any way. I understand when people love their family, but for me it's people who hate their family and still talk to them. Read it on here all the time. My parents demand I name my child something or they'll disown me, or family spent all my inheritance and said tough luck. Why even have these people in your life? Family or not, people who abuse and disrespect you don't deserve your mental and emotional energy. Yet, people continue to subjugate themselves to them, and I will never understand it. Because there is such strong social stigma against separating from your family, even at adulthood. I feel like a hateful, awful person because I find my mom a burden. People who don't, just don't get it. Additionally, it would ruin relationships with my siblings as their response to the trauma is to seek out drama and take care of our mom as though she were their child. Having a mom who loves you? Sounds fake. My husband calls his mom every few days for a chat, and even now I find it odd that he enjoys talking with her. I'm glad they have a good relationship, but I can't relate. I don't think this one is as weird as people make it out to be. It all depends on how the family situation was growing up. I can completely understand if you want to cut yourself off from someone who's manipulative and abusive. You don't need that energy in your life. You don't have to have it. If you find other people you can care about and have them in your life, that's great. That can be your family. I think in America, we have more of a flexibility to be able to decide who our family really is. We're not always beholden to the idea that family is forever. Story 4. Running a brush through my hair. I have very curly hair, so only finger brush it when it's wet, which isn't often. Seeing people grab a brush and run it through their hair when they've been in the wind or just to freshen up? I wish. I have to brush it in the shower because it's just too curly and thick to do anything with. My sister, whose hair is like her father's and would never understand the struggle, grabbed a round hairbrush one day and thought it would be funny to put it in my hair. It got stuck, and I just sat there and cried. Another time when I was really young, my aunt, who was my father's whiter half-sister, decided to put tiny buns all over my head with newspaper elastics that ended up getting stuck and ripping out my hair. I literally bled because of it. Ouch! My dad is where I got my curls from, so he knew to brush from the tips to the roots, whereas my mom didn't, and would try to get a brush through from root to tip. I once had a hairdresser brush my hair while it was dry, and I was holding back tears the whole time. I was too shy to say anything. Then there was always kids at school wanting to straighten it. Story 5. Not voicing discomfort in certain situations. Too often, I see that things could be solved if someone just spoke up, but it baffles me when they don't. Sometimes people grow up in environments where their voice was always shot down, so they can't notice their own discomfort. So one day I was stressed because I had an awful day at work, and I had very limited time before my evening classes to prepare dinner and clean the kitchen. And my husband has the audacity to be upset because I didn't have time to eat dinner with him. I apologized to him and cried, but could not understand why I was upset. I could only think that it was not his fault, and I was sorry for him. Putting others' wants ahead of our own needs sometimes is encouraged since childhood, that it's very difficult to notice our own discomfort. I have bad social anxiety and don't like to rock the boat. It's like a physical pain even thinking about speaking up in some situations, because I don't want to make anyone feel bad, even if it makes me feel bad. Story 6. Being able to do a normal amount of housework/errands and still have plenty of energy left for hobbies. I have ADHD. Edit to add. Wow. It's reassuring how many people, both with ADHD and other chronic conditions, relate to this. But please slow down on the comments a bit. I'm very overwhelmed right now. On the ADHD train, being able to sit down to do something and just do it. Like, people can apparently just do that? Even with meds, it's still a struggle. It blows my mind that people can start a task and finish it without tons of distraction and sidetracking and zoning out and just walking away. It doesn't even have to be a hard task. I feel ya. I hyper-focused on cleaning yesterday because my dog had been shedding like nuts and I've been constantly inhaling fur. Took me about 4 hours. Then I laid on the couch for about 8 hours and watched a bunch of Star Wars movies because my gas tank was at 100% empty. I can completely understand this. I know there are some things that have to get done, and sometimes I'll freeze up because there's so much stuff to get done I can't make a decision on which thing to prioritize. It's like an old slapstick movie where 2 or more people are stuck in a doorway. They have to get through, but nothing gets done. I have to stop and take a deep breath and concentrate on figuring out which thing should be done and what can be put off till later. Story 7. I'm an office worker. I like my job and coworkers. I also really like it. I can listen to podcasts or watch TV shows while working, and I love the fixed schedules. Coming out of gastronomy work? That's heaven. Please tell me your secret to getting an office job, or at least just advice, to be honest. I hate working retail, and the biggest point for me is the fixed schedule. Weekends off are a huge bonus too, since I need to start college, and the one thing holding me back at this point is my job. So you're the jerkwad. What a Toby. I kind of miss the random chit-chat and minor socialization here and there that came from being in an office. I'm one of the least social people out there, but I still need some of it from time to time. Being cooped up at home has been a drag. I started a new job about 4 months ago and have never met any of these people in person. Story 8. Being quiet late at night when your parents are asleep. My parents are deaf. Damn, what a life. Not being afraid of being heard? Well, not by your parents at least. I don't know about siblings. So many possibilities. I'm stressing just at the prospect of being a child and knowing if something happens to me in the house, I can't just scream for help. Would you quit waving your arms? I have a headache. Gives middle finger. Watch your freaking hands, young man. Corn on full blast for you whenever you want. No shame. What a life. Plot twist. They've been playing deaf for all those years just to catch you in the act and ground you. Story 9. That trope where the husband is a useless piece of lazy dirt who couldn't possibly feed himself or care for the kids and house without your divine feminine guidance? It used to make me feel bad. Like, am I supposed to be running this place by myself while my man just lies on the couch after work? But then I realized, no, it's the trope that's awful. It's everywhere, though, and women think it's somehow cute or empowering to perpetuate it. As a husband and father, this trope ticks me off. I am extremely invested in my family and am more than capable of taking care of business. Yet, when I'm out and about with my daughter, it's, oh, must be Mom's day off. Take off with that junk. It's not Mom's day off. This is me being a regular old responsible dad. That's my default, you lowbrow, unassuming piece of dirt that apparently had turds for parents. I think a lot of this is perpetuated by TV and movies. Anyone who watched Home Improvement knew that it was always the dad that was going to mess things up. Any sitcom usually has the dad be the lazy one. Even if the mom had a job, the mom was supposed to come home and just clean everything up because dad was just being irresponsible and partying while she was away. Yet somehow, she loves him despite his flaws. Real life isn't like that. I know relationships where both people are equally responsible for the household. They'll both put in their time. It's not about roles. Stuff needs to be done around the house, and everybody's got to pitch in to get it done, whatever that needs to be. Story 10. Having a car payment. I've never actually had one. I always just buy a cheap car outright. Constantly saving a little bit for the next car is similar to a car payment, but if I miss a month, it doesn't really impact me or cause me stress. It's funny, I feel the opposite way. My dad always preached that it was better to buy the cheap car outright and not have a payment. But then his cars were always broken down, so it just feels like he did have a payment. He just had no idea how much it was or when it would be due. And when it was always inconvenient. Yeah, this was my dad's mentality. Why pay for quality when you can just pay for quantity? Cheap cars, cheap clothes, cheap appliances, etc., etc. Even if over a 10-year period he saved money, the amount of inconvenience and outright inefficiency was hardly worth it.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.